Welcome to the Money Down, presented by FanDuel, the #1 sports book. We have a special guest tonight. We have Joe Bartel, fantasy football analyst for Rotowire, kicking it with us tonight. He's going to talk about, some of my draft strategies. We'll have some conversation about my draft strategy that went on during our draft.
Terrible.
Where I might have gone wrong, but I think I went right. But we'll see. But we'll see when it comes to that, man. But whenever we have people on, we like to go back to the beginning. So, what made you want to be a fantasy football analyst? Like you said, you've been 10 years in the game at Rotowire. That's a very sustainable position. Like I said, I've never heard that in this game in a long time. So what made you want to get into it?
Yeah, so I guess in high school, some of the popular kids at my smaller school in high school invited me to the fantasy football league they were in. We were at like a D4, D5 school, so everyone played football, and I was really bad cornerback and dual running back. That's how small the team was. So I was like, oh, cool, the popular kids are inviting me into this thing. This is great. And they knew I was a nerd about football, as I am now, and watching ESPN, all the Sports Center highlights back in the day. And I fell in love with it right away. In fact, I very vividly remember pulling a faux pas now, which is in fantasy football. Steven Jackson, of course, running back for the Rams, was a massive fantasy asset at the time. And I paid my buddy $20 to go ahead and trade for him because he was already out of the league at that point or was going to lose. And I thought, hey, you're getting your money back in the entry. This is perfect. And me trying to go ahead and win the league, some super competitive, that learned now, in the industry a bit longer, don't do that. That's not a good thing to go ahead and do. But really that spawned my interest. And honestly, my family is super into sports. We've been a Packers family for God knows how long at this point. We got the Milwaukee County tickets at this point as well. And it was a way for me to interact with all my super old uncles and aunts and stuff. And we would do our family drafts at our cottage as well. So fantasy football has been a way for me to connect with my family, with some friends as well too. And now it's kind of the livelihood for me as well. And it's been a really, really fun experience to go ahead and kind of keep building on that in my career.
100%. Why do you think fantasy football has become so popular? Because it seems like every year there's more and more people playing. Obviously, some people get more frustrated than others. Some people take it a little bit more serious than others. Like again, us being former athletes and everything, you get the messages after games and all that stuff about how you didn't perform.
Yeah,
you got women playing, you got men playing, you got kids playing it. So why do you think it's become this big of a deal?
Well, I'd imagine people get frustrated when they take a quarterback with the very first pick overall. Maybe we can get to that in just a second because
that's terrible.
Strategy-wise,
it's a great strategy to me, but we'll get to that.
This is a really good question. I think a lot of other fantasy sports are trying to grapple with it too, because like fantasy baseball was the originator of the fantasy sports content. You have fantasy basketball, which is a prominent thing, but not to the degree of football. And I think it's because the seasons are short. There are fantasy baseball leagues that typically go with all 162 games in a season. With fantasy basketball, it's an 82-game season. It's a little longer as well, too. Football, it's 17, 18 weeks. More realistically, if you do take a quarterback #1 overall, maybe it's only 10 weeks, 12 weeks in the regular season, and that's it. Well, I promise we'll get to it. I just love that. This is the banter that we have to have. So I think that it's a little bit shorter, and also that you really are only having to focus on one day, theoretically one day, right? Most of the games being played on Sunday. I know there's the Thursday and Monday and Saturday games now, too. That's part of this. But I also think the way in which we consume football is at a different level than every other sport. You think about baseball and all the sabermetrics that are involved, all the different numbers. That can go over a lot of people's heads, especially if they're trying to play that casually. Football, you can more or less understand the concept right away. You don't have to sit through a bunch of commercials, but you can watch a football game and know more or less what's happening over the course of 3 hours. So I think that's in large part why it's popular. And also, football is the most popular sport right now. And I think it's a way for other people to engage just overall from a sports perspective.
Sure. And speaking of, fantasy football leagues, I am going to be running a fantasy football league where some fans can get involved. Maybe I'll pick a little bit of a different strategy this time. We'll see if Joe can convince me otherwise. But I'm taking Josh Allen 10 out of 10. But I have a best ball league where you have to have a Rotowire subscription, either 6-month or 1-year subscription. You got to use the Money Down promo code to enter. You have to get into our Discord to go through all the different prizes. The first prize will be a signed jersey by me. Second prize, you get a customized T-shirt by just balling with Jay of your favorite NFL player, whoever your favorite NFL player is. He'll customize it to your liking, so that'll be the second prize. So that'll be pretty dope. I'm in quite a few fantasy leagues right now, so Hey, maybe I'll get better and better with the more drafts that I do. Okay, now we'll get to the biggest topic into this. I did draft Josh Allen, with number 1 overall pick, number 1 pick. Tell me why I was wrong when it comes to that.
You're gonna be on your head in the comments.
All right, so let's.
I don't think that's a bad pick though. Josh at 1. Why is that bad?
So let's talk about this because I think I listened to your podcast last week. So your second and third round pick. Let's just go over those because I think this is important context for the listeners. Because while I might get angry at your first round selection, or at least tease you a little bit, I think you did well in the second or third round. So can we just talk about your first 5 picks overall?
Yeah, we can do that.
I don't want to put you in the spot, but
I think I went Josh Allen 1. I believe I went Tyreek Hill number 2. I believe.
I think so. Yeah.
And then I went Garrett Wilson with my third pick. Those are my top 3. And I believe I might have went Travis Kelce.
Okay. All right.
I gotta go through my whole thing with Travis Kelce and then maybe like a James Conner. I think those are my top 5 picks in my draft.
Look, I'm in 17 redraft leagues, which is the ones that you're setting lineups each and every week, and I'm in probably 40 plus best balls. I understand the idea that it's definitely hard to track your lineups. I have to actually have an Excel spreadsheet with every single player, when the bye weeks are happening, when we're going through the different waiver wire drops. Like I totally get it, but I think this is the really interesting point because you had mentioned, okay, number 1 overall pick Josh Allen at quarterback. There's a number of reasons why I think fantasy experts would say that's not the correct decision, but you are not the only person I've heard talk about that. In fact, I've had this conversation lots before. So if I sound well-versed, that's because I've had this conversation a little bit. All right, so I always do this easier from a numbers perspective. If I end up boring anybody, that's fine. You could just hit the screen and wake me up or whatever else. But so Josh Allen scored 380 points in ESPN leagues last year. Notably, the guy who didn't take number 1 overall, Lamar Jackson, scored 430. I think that's a questionable conversation we could have as well, too. But let's just go with Josh Allen. So Josh Allen scored 380 points. Sam Darnold, who was not drafted anywhere, even in Sam Darnold's mother's league, he was not drafted. That's how little he was scoring last year. Sam Darnold scored 310 points. Baker Mayfield, who was pretty conventionally being drafted very late in draft, scored 365. So 20 points lower than Josh Allen, 70 points in Sam Darnold's league, where you could get him for free. Jaden Daniels, who was obviously electric his rookie year, was also kind of a quarterback outside that top 12 or 13. He scored 355, so that's about 35 points less than what Josh Allen did last year. 10 total quarterbacks scored within 100 points of Josh Allen. Okay. In a 12-team league, you have about 10 quarterbacks that are about roughly the same spot of Josh Allen or close to it. I mean, 100 points is a massive difference. Like, I get that. And there's a reason why Josh Allen's conventionally being drafted as the first quarterback, not first overall, but first quarterback in leagues.
Overall, in my opinion. Hey.
All right. So Josh Allen, 380 points. We're able to find the Sam Darnolds, the Baker Mayfields. Let's go other positions here. And I think easier for the conversation is running back. It's not just because I'm on this podcast. It's also an important fantasy one, too. Jahmyr Gibbs was the running back leader with 360 points. Only 8 total running backs scored within 100 of Jahmyr Gibbs, and only 6 total scored 300 more points. So the reason why you typically don't take quarterbacks is, A, it's easier to find guys that more or less give you the same production, but also, more importantly, the running back position itself is really difficult to find these guys. If you're drafting somebody elite over, early on, Bijan Robinson, for example, or Jahmyr Gibbs or Saquon Barkley, you know you're getting stability at that position as opposed to the quarterbacks, which, while you have to get the Sam Darnold year right, you could still get that off of the waiver wire. The other part, and I think this is really important, in most leagues, a quarterback, in your 12-team leagues, there's one quarterback that's being started every week. In your 12-team leagues, typically it's 2 running backs that starts. We're saying 24 running backs plus the flex. There's just more running backs that have to go off the board as well, too. So whereas you could find the Sam Darnolds off the waiver wire pretty easy, the Baker Mayfields, Jaden Daniels, that are later round picks, you can't necessarily do it with the running backs either. I actually went and looked. I was surprised by this myself. There were only 2 running backs that had that finished with 200 more points, Bucky Irving and Chase Brown, who were effectively free elsewhere. So it's easy to find the quarterbacks off the waiver wire, relatively speaking, over the running backs, and also you're starting more running backs as well. So not that you shouldn't go quarterback number 1 over Josh Allen. If nothing else, you're telling the rest of your fake team in fantasy that's really important, that you want consistency and stability. But it is easier to find the production at the quarterback position, and it's not nearly as important as the running backs and receivers.
That was my biggest thing. I just like consistency, and I like least amount of injury risk too. Josh Allen has been pretty healthy throughout his career, and I just like consistent performance. I could have went with Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan. Jahmyr Gibbs, I feel like last year a lot of his fantasy stats went up because David Montgomery got hurt for some time. So he was able to capitalize on that for a few weeks. So I feel like a lot goes into it. Though I thought about Lamar Jackson too, though. I was like, Lamar, Josh Allen. I was like, he got Derrick Henry. Who knows if, how that meshes again this year? But both of them go crazy. I don't know. So I know with Buffalo Bills, that whole offense got to go through Josh Allen regardless.
My dog picking based off from a GM perspective.
From a GM perspective,
he's building a real team. That's the fantasy part of it. Yes,
I'm trying to, you know what I'm saying? Because I ain't gonna be picking for a long time. So if I don't pick the guy that I truly want, I ain't gonna be there 2 rounds later. So that's how I went about it. I know it's a little bit different, than most people probably would have thought about it. They probably went Jamar Chase, Saquon, something like that, which I get. I got it. Because I had Kirk Cousins last year as my quarterback, and that failed.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm with my security blanket. You know what I mean? So I don't know what y'all thoughts on it.
Can I ask you, analytic wise, right? Like you just broke down all the numbers.
Yeah, too many. I know.
It was perfect for me. So my draft is coming up. Who should I be looking to take at number 1 as far as the numbers wise? Because I didn't even think about Jaden Daniels and Sam Darnold scoring, Baker Mayfield scoring maybe 50 points less than the MVP last year, fantasy point wise. So who should I be looking to be taking at number 1?
So I'm also answering this question for all the other listeners out there. I do this on multiple of my SiriusXM shows and the podcasts we do. I think it's really important whenever this question is asked, whether it be to you guys who get angry or you get the angry DM sent because you didn't do something correctly, or if you're saying to the analysts who also get angry DMs, not to the extent that you guys do, but I also get the angry DMs when I get things incorrect as well. I would love to know what your roster settings are, what the league settings are. Like, are you starting 3 receivers? Is it a super flex league, which gets more and more complicated now when 2 quarterbacks are there? This is a really important question to ask. Like, I would say, again, you can maybe look it up, or it doesn't really matter. But from a normal conversation with this, the idea is either receiver or running back should be the first overall off the board. And conventionally, it is Jamar Chase, like James mentioned. He was the top overall fantasy receiver last year. You look at that Bengals defense. I know you guys were talking last week about Trey Hendrickson possibly on the trade block again. The defense for the Bengals is going to be possibly historically bad, at least very, very bad overall, we would assume. And therefore, the Bengals offense is going to have to score a lot of points. So Jamar Chase feels like one of those safe, reliable guys who also has the upside of doing Cooper Kupp from a couple of years ago, 2,000 receiving yards, 12 plus touchdowns. There are some people, and this goes back to the vibes conversation we're having with Josh Allen. Jamar Chase was the number 1 overall fantasy receiver last year. That doesn't normally repeat. You don't normally see back-to-back years in which the guy who did it last year does it again. All right. Well, then if you don't want to take a receiver and you don't take quarterback, you would normally go running back. Well, Saquon Barkley was right up there. Jahmyr Gibbs is right up there. I believe in the Madden curse. I think that's real. I don't want to have Saquon Barkley as my top overall selection. And Jahmyr Gibbs, I agree with you, James. I'm a little bit worried about the post-Ben Johnson offense, what Ben Johnson now is in Chicago and how that means from a football perspective. And David Montgomery will be back as well, too. You hope he doesn't get hurt again, but even still, I think Bijan Robinson's probably the right answer if you don't want to go Jamar Chase. I think the Falcons are going to score plenty of points. I know we got the shaking of heads here, right? Yeah, I know. I know the audience here. I like it's going to be Michael Penix, it's going to be Bijan Robinson, and then I really, really like Drake London too, who's typically a back end of the first round, early second round selection. But if you're not taking Jamar Chase, it's more often than not Bijan Robinson.
Not Kyle Pitts.
I think in the industry at this point, we're saying never be tempted. It's the siren song of all siren songs in fantasy football is Kyle Pitts. And frankly, I might do it again, but it costs you almost nothing to go ahead and walk into that waters once more. So yes, Drake London and Bijan Robinson are the 2 correct answers.
So we're talking about you go ahead, Warren.
I was just about to say, so like, we mentioned running backs and how important they are. Like, what are your thoughts on like drafting rookie running backs?
Oh my God. Are you doing this intentionally? Because I had this question for James. I was teeing this up deliberately. This is supposed to be a historic rookie running back class. I almost feel it's not appropriate for me to even talk about it, given this group of people that I'm with right now. But supposed to be, this is one of the most historic running back classes we've seen in some time. I thought Devin Neal was a really good running back prospect. He falls to day 3. Taj Brooks, I thought was also really good, falls to day 3. Comparing to like Trey Benson and Blake Corum from the year past, which were high selections, Jonathan Brooks, who has hardly even touched the NFL field. Like, this is supposed to be a really good rookie running back class. Conventionally, rookie running backs will get drafted earlier than rookie receivers because we know what the the volume will more or less be. You think about Ezekiel Elliott's rookie year, even Bijan Robinson's rookie year, those guys were top 5 selections. Saquon Barkley, same thing. I don't think Ashton Genty's quite the same level of running back prospect that those guys are, but because the draft capital invested in him, people are going to take Ashton Genty as a first-round selection, typically like 9, 10, 11 overall. Like you're debating between Puka Nacua, Malik Neighbors, or Ashton Genty. And then there's Amari Hampton with the superficial eye injury stuff with Najee Harris. Yeah. That's spooked enough people who follow the Chargers like I do and say, well, if Najee Harris is going to play a whole lot, Amari Hampton with the first-round draft capital theoretically should. And he's going around the 3rd or 4th round. I loved Caleb Johnson through a lot of this process. Maybe that's the Big Ten bias in me. I thought that Travion Henderson, I'm maybe looking at a Patriots guy here who might echo my calls. I thought he was my favorite guy because he could pass block really well. So I'll pose this question to the collective group, but maybe there's one that's better versed at answering than somebody else. But James, in particular, you played 8 full seasons in the league, right? Multi-time Super Bowl winner. Now you're assistant coach for Illinois here. The fantasy industry is calling this a historic rookie running back class. What qualities do you need to see from the running back class to assume that they'll get significant playing time early on? Is it pass blocking? Do they need to be good out of the backfield? Is it just reading the holes? Like, what are you looking for when you're saying this rookie will play a lot? Because that really is a big question for this year.
I think versatility, first and foremost, you got to be able to play on 1st, 2nd, and 3rd down. I think that allows you to get on the field a little bit more. That way you're not just getting the ball handed to you on every single play. You got to be able to protect the quarterback. I don't think any, NFL running back coach is going to put you out on the field if you can't protect the quarterback. So, and I love guys who can catch the ball out of the backfield too. What the game has turned to as far as it being extremely pass heavy, although the last few years are starting to become more and more of a running league. If you can create a mismatch or you're a good, screen guy out of the pass game and everything like that and put so much dynamic into your offense, I think that helps you get on the field early a little bit, as well. As you saw Travion Henderson, what he's been doing the first 2 weeks of the preseason, returns a kick. He's, running the ball, scoring touchdowns that way, showing the versatility that he can bring to the game. I mean, how could you not put a guy like that on the football field? So that's what I like to see. Now, one big thing I like to see in running backs, too, is contact balance. I think my favorite, back in the NFL with contact balance, right, Alvin Kamara, he just just bounce off him left and right. And he just continue to run straight. If you're able to, essentially – you see defenders, but you don't see them at the same time. You're just running. They're hitting you, but they just kind of deflect off of you. I think that's a huge trait to have because you're just able to run through the arm tackles because NFL, those holes, yes, there's going to be big holes every now and then, but a lot of times there's going to be some small creases there for just a split second, and there's going to be some defenders in the way. You just got to act like they're not even there. So those are some of the things I like to see in running backs.
Is there a rookie running back that you think applies? And you can't just say Patriots guys because that's not fair. But I know you've watched it a little bit. You've of course watched these guys in college. Is there somebody that maybe people aren't recognizing in terms of that contact balance? Because there's a lot of stats that fantasy guys will throw around, but I think the eye from an actual football player himself and a coach would be kind of interesting too.
For me, it's rookie running back that got drafted to Denver Broncos, R.J. Harvey. He was out of UCF. He's extremely shifty, good contact balance. They don't really have a solidified starter, on that team. So, if he goes out there, proves himself during training camp, these preseason games, he could be one of those guys that could provide, he probably didn't get drafted in most fantasy leagues. So he's probably sitting there on the waiver wire. Maybe after week 1, week 2, he gets more reps. I think he's going to be on people's radar.
Well, I'll hate to break the news to you in any other leagues that you're in, but RJ Harvey is pretty much going in 6th or 7th round. And I think people are worried about J.K. Dobbins cutting into the workload, but I am not. I think Sean Payton is the mastermind of those running backs. And if they think this guy is worth drafting as high as they did as a converted quarterback turned running back, mid-second round selection, that he could be the Alvin Kamara is something that people throw around in the fantasy industry a lot. I don't know if that's fair because Alvin Kamara is really, really good, like you mentioned, but that they find that skill set and wanted to go ahead and get that guy in RJ Harvey, I think is really interesting too. So I completely agree with you. I'll draft a lot of Travion Henderson. I'll draft Amari Hampton. I will draft RJ Harvey. I'll draft Caleb Johnson. If this is as good of a rookie running back class as it seems like everyone's saying, including you, James, then I think we are undervaluing that position right now because we just haven't seen it yet. There's the positives that these rookies haven't hurt you. It's why you're fine drafting them because you don't have negative memories tied to them from a fantasy perspective, but you also haven't seen it on the field. And I think that's kind of the potential that people miss sometimes when drafting these guys.
You brought up a great point too with the Sean Payton thing. I didn't even think of that. That's like a perfect.
It's crazy because I was watching something with John Gruden, and John Gruden brought up RJ Harvey specifically. He was like, what Sean was able to do with Alvin Kamara, he sees this guy kind of like with Sproles. He kind of sees this guy in the same fit. And you talked about it, contact balance, but you guys talk about contact balance and being able to. How is Ashton Jenney not in that conversation when he, in my opinion, he's shown that this past year, what he did last year, and then what he did last week.
Yeah.
Talking about contact balance. How was he not in that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, again, he is late first round selection. So it would typically go Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, Jahmyr Gibbs, and then Christian McCaffrey. And in the fantasy industry, we have this McCaffrey question about will the Niners lie to us again about his injury status? What happens if McCaffrey gets injured again, getting close to that year or age 30 season? The workload that he's had. There's league winning upside, especially with all the injuries the Niners have had to the receivers. That might just literally be George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey for the first 2 months for San Francisco. And they'll still win football games because Kyle Shanahan's a great coach. And frankly, they have a very easy schedule. But if you are worried about the McCaffrey injury stuff like I am, and I was burned last year, then Genty's probably the right answer. More importantly, what happens afterwards among drafted running backs? And it would typically be Devon Achane, who you guys talked about last week, given his injury stuff, already banged up now. I don't know if he'll be ready for week 1, but more importantly, that's a smaller back. And if you're expecting him to get the volume he did last year, I just don't know if I buy that. Then it's like Josh Jacobs, who I love a lot as a Packer fan, but even Jonathan Taylor, I like Jonathan Taylor, not just as the UW guy. I think he's one of the best backs in the NFL. It just gets a little bit difficult because Genty is going to have tons of volume. And while everyone gets confused that Chip Kelly's like 2014 Eagles offense is going to be somehow there in 2025 for the Raiders, that won't happen, right? We saw Ohio State actually not use that same sort of tempo when Chip Kelly was offense coordinator last year. But it's Raheem Mostert, it's Zamir White, it's a bunch of other. I think that's the conventionally nice way to say it for the backfield. And when you have a top 10 pick, you better be getting the best out of that and the most workload. So I think Genty, we always say it in fantasy, volume is king. Genty is the quintessential example of that because I think he's going to be the pass catcher. He's going to get plenty of carries. And if they are trying to slow the tempo and protect that defense that really is just Max Crosby and nobody else, then I think by default, you need to have a running game that's successful or at least can slow the tempo down. I think Genty does that really well.
My only concern about Genty, I think he'll have a good rookie year and all that. It's just the support and cast around him. I know they got Jacoby. I know they got Brock Bowers. Just like I don't know what that offense is going to look like and how much, he may get
totally
20 carries for 80 yards. Like I don't know like how their offensive line is and what that run game is going to look like. I said, not to like cast any doubt on him. That dude's a freak of nature, what he can do on the football field. I just have to wait to see what that offense look like. I'd be scared to draft him in the first round in fantasy. And that's not saying he's not a dog on the field. That's just strictly fantasy football.
Football. That's just the name of the game.
We talk about, doing mock drafts. How does Rotowire help people get prepared, for their fantasy football drafts and everything like that? What type of, stats can they look at, or what type of percentages help them, whether they make a pick in the first round, they need some help with their second round pick, or they make a pick in the first or second round. How does it help evaluate to make their team better?
Yeah, this could be a long-winded answer, but you guys talked about the origin story of me or like everyone else when you have them on the show. And I vividly remember booting up ESPN and loading into the lineups, like to the mock draft lobbies and waiting till all 12 people are filled. And then people wouldn't do a draft after the round 4, or they intentionally take kickers just to mess with everyone. There's still trolls back in 2011 doing those ESPN mock drafts. So the Rotowire mock draft tool is all AI initiated, but it's also based off our custom rankings and other draft tools that are out there and other places that have ADP. So while I call it the AC factor, which in Wisconsin would be the alcohol consumed, there's a bit of variance that happens with the mock drafts. And it's to prepare you guys for your leagues if there is a bit of alcohol consumed that happens. And you can go ahead and do reps. I think that's the biggest thing for me. And the way I'd say, like, okay, James, you really are adamant that quarterback should go number 1 overall. What I would tell you is download the Rotowire Fantasy Football app, either on the App Store or the software itself. Go ahead and do a mock draft, a 12-team league with your quarterback number 1 overall selection, and look at what that roster ends up doing. And then say, do what I would do. Take Jamar Chase, number 1 overall, and look what that roster happens. Maybe Josh Allen comes back to you. He would in the second or third round. And our draft assistant tool would actually tell you, hey, there's a 99% chance that Josh Allen actually is going to be back in the second, third turn. You could look at Joe Burrow 4 or 5 turn, for example. Like, you guys know this especially well. I think that the way to help the fantasy draft experience feel good is to have fun with your friends, be in the atmosphere and area that you're talking with people. But also, I don't want to be nervous entering it. In my mind, the only way to get rid of that is just by doing reps. So using the Rotowire mock draft tool is just a way to get a bunch of different reps, and you can go through it really quickly as well too. So any strategy that you might have in mind, you can go ahead and go through that with the Rotowire Fantasy Football mock draft. And again, I'm going to have 17 different redraft leagues, something like 40 best balls. There is money on the line the way I'm doing this, and you best bet I'm going to have a lot of reps, as I should.
Woo, we do it a lot. You brought up Jonathan Taylor a little bit. Was today that Daniel Jones been named the starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. How do you think that affects, Jonathan Taylor's fantasy football value?
Yeah, so there'll be some people that say this is a good thing because Daniel Jones can do the read option stuff. We saw that with the Giants. That's why he got that $40 million contract and almost immediately looked bad in hindsight with it. And my argument was, so could Anthony Richardson, right? So the idea is who can complete more passes. And theoretically, if Daniel Jones can do that, and this is very much theoretical, then the Colts offense does a little bit better, but that might cut into the volume that Jonathan Taylor gets. I think in reality, we're talking about one of the worst quarterback rooms in the NFL. And it pains me to say, because I love Jonathan Taylor. I think the Colts are probably my AFC team if I was to pick one. But I don't know how the offense can be successful despite, I think, having really good receivers. So Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, Tyler Warren being their first-round selection too. They should have plenty of weapons. And then there was injuries to their offensive line in this past preseason game too that I think complicate things a little bit. Again, if we're saying Jonathan Taylor is a second-round selection because he's going to get plenty of volume out of the Colts backfield and should be in a good spot because Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson gives just enough of a rushing threat to have that happen, then you have to say, okay, well, will I take Josh Jacobs over him instead? Yes, I think so. The Packers' offense is going to be better. They're probably going to score more points and more touchdowns. Would you take Bucky Irving over him? I think probably yes, too, because the Buccaneers' offense, same thing. So there becomes a bit of a slide if you are concerned about this Colts quarterback situation, whether it was A-Rich or Daniel Jones, which was, again, announced earlier today. So I think that's the question you have to sort of ask yourself. Jonathan Taylor, in my mind, and I will stand by this until I'm blue in the face, is one of, if not the best running backs in the NFL. But that doesn't always translate to fantasy, because the other circumstances, whether the offensive line, like you mentioned with Genty, or really more importantly, the offensive scheme itself with the quarterback play, can limit the players a little bit.
Since we're on the topic of now, speaking of, teams coming out and naming their starting quarterback, Cleveland also did the same today with naming Joe Flacco. Can you give us a pick maybe on the Cleveland Browns that you think could be a sleeper? I know they got guys like, Jerry Jeudy, like that. Who's somebody that you think if I'm on and I want to get a receiver on the back end or a top player, who's someone you think can make some noise for the Browns?
This is a great question. A worse fantasy analyst probably would say Jerry Jeudy or David Njoku, who's like a 6th or 8th round pick. But the people want to hear the word sleeper, and it means guys that could probably get anywhere. And I think the answer is Cedric Tillman, who really had a good stretch last season and benefited because Jameson Winston was a volume-based quarterback, right? Just the amount of times that the Browns were dropping back and Winston was throwing the ball, you had Cedric Tillman end up getting the benefit. Now, of course, the concussion stuff happened. He misses most of the rest of the regular season. And I think he kind of got lost as oh yeah, that guy really helped me win a couple weeks, and I never saw him again. In the event that Flacco is starting, let's just say a month, and we could have that debate for 10 minutes here at this point, because I don't know if that's the answer. But if Flacco plays even 6 or 7 weeks, you're going to see that offense pass the ball enough times where Cedric Tillman, who is undrafted in a lot of places, but conventionally one of your last picks in leagues, that might be a guy that we saw talented enough in the right situation last year to go ahead and kind of emerge. But I don't know. Again, we talk about bleak quarterback rooms with the Colts. I think the Browns is conventionally assumed to be the weakest, because if you're starting Flacco in week 1, you're not in a good place. And that you have 3 draft picks invested in backup quarterbacks. Because remember, they used a draft pick to trade for Kenny Pickett too, who they might have to cut or hold on the roster. I don't know. It's not a good spot to be. That was about as weird of a draft as you could have assumed with Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel. And that none of them have really emerged as the guy that you would hope for during training camp and the preseason, I think speaks to all more the reason don't draft many Browns this year. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, hey, here's a sleeper, Cedric Tillman. I'm not drafting him all that often. So I don't even if a guy that's a fantasy expert, I'm not drafting him all that much because I don't have confidence or faith that this Cleveland offense is going to look really competent even in October.
But what about the defense?
That was my next question.
Defense should get
I mean, I like Myles Garrett, but in fantasy, defense doesn't matter all that much. And unfortunately, for a few of you guys in this call, it's even getting phased out further. I hear more questions about, hey, Joe, how do I tell my league mates to get rid of the kicker and defense position altogether, as opposed to draft defenses higher? So
there was a year I drafted. Who did I draft? There was a year I drafted like Pittsburgh, and Dallas's defense was averaging like 20 points.
Turnovers.
And that was like for like 4-5 straight weeks.
DeRon Bland returning the touchdowns. I was going to say that James probably is intimately familiar because the Patriots defense was probably one of the better defenses fantasy-wise for a number of years, where that maybe revitalized the position in fantasy, a little bit because it's collective group. I think the Browns defense is really good. And if you're Kevin Stefanski and you're trying to win football games, which is what a 2-time coach of the year wants to do, it's certainly not to expose the offense a lot. So I would have almost rather assumed, or I think what's going to happen, you'll play those younger quarterbacks, Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel, or both. And the idea is, all right, well, if they only throw the ball 22 times, I probably won't lose the game immediately. Whereas if Flacco throws 2 picks, like he did at various points last year as a starter or the year before, you're kind of playing catch up. And while the defense is good, you can only do so much. So I think that's one of the reasons why Flacco will probably transition out of the starting quarterback's job, even if they're like, I don't know, 4-6 by week 10. I think at some point that's the way Stefanski kind of operates. But I don't, again, that's not good for fantasy. And even from a defensive perspective in fantasy, it's not a good spot to be in.
Talk about taking your advice. He literally added Cedric Tillman. As soon as that rolled off your tongue, I got a notification. Warren added Cedric Tillman.
I appreciate it, Joe. Hey, you got to be ready, bro. You got to be ready. Hey, when an elite fantasy football knowledge savant comes on your pod and he gives you a hint or a tip, you gotta take it and you gotta respond.
Competitive edge.
Call it what you want. Hey, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
You too much, man. You too much. Look, you're a Packers fan, correct?
Oh, yes. I bleed green and gold at this point. Yep.
All right. So FanDuel has the Packers at over under 9.5 wins this season. Where you at? You going over or under on that?
So you guys should know I'm about as pessimistic of a sports fan as I can be. I have watched my Packers time and time again get to the pinnacle, be one of the best teams, and then something dumb happens. I still remember the Hakeem Nicks halftime Hail Mary that happened against the Giants in the 2022 or 2012 season. I think about all the years that we have a block punt with the Niners and things like that. So I have like negative memories anytime there are expectations with the Packers. These past 2 years with Jordan Love, it's been nice because people aren't assuming some great things. I think they will be better in the division, right? I think they only went 1-5 last year, losing to the Bears in week 18. They will be better by default in the division. I don't know if the Lions and Vikings are as good of teams as they were last year, and they might have been propped up from an overall record. They are still playoff caliber teams, but what was it? 14-2, 14-3, or 15-2, whatever it ended up being at the end of the year. Like I don't know if they're quite to that level. So the Packers might by default be better in the division. I think that's the correct line. It's either 10 or it's 9. It's right around that spot. And I think 10 is probably the right call, but they certainly aren't operating or starting on the right foot with all the injuries to Jaden Reed and Romeo Doubs, and Love had that thumb surgery as well too. And you had Marshawn Lloyd now out for an extended time with a hamstring injury. The defense really had no notable additions. I know you guys were talking last week about Micah Parsons. That would be great if the Packers trade for him, but like James said, they never, ever do anything fun like that. So right, like when your best defensive addition was changing the assistant pass rush coach, that's not a good spot to be in if you're trying to turn things around. And they lost Jair. They don't have a lot of secondary pieces. And I like Javon Bullard, for example. I think Evan Williams was a guy that was missed last year at times. Xavier McKinney, of course, is a dog too. But like, there's only so much that secondary can do if you're not generating some sort of rush against the quarterback. So I think the answer is over. I think it's at 10. Would I bet it? No. And that might be the pessimist in it that says it, frankly.
I don't know.
I didn't know y'all went 1-5 in the division last year.
I didn't know that either.
It's tough though. The Vikings.
It really tough division. You brought up, the Hakeem Nicks bomb. Was it 2 years ago that you guys NFC champion? Y'all lost to San Francisco one year.
You're just trying to drive the knife into me. Yeah, no. I
got you.
I mean, how many times?
I got you.
4 or 5.
If you need to know, he a Falcons fan.
That's why I have to, because these two crazy mother. You know,
it's really that one.
They give me hell every week talking about the Falcons. And granted, we do something stupid and outrageous every offseason or something. So I gotta at least, shift a little bit of the heat over to somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more like I said, and this goes to all the Wisconsin sports. Like I remember the Raptors beating the Bucks a couple of years before they ended up winning the championship, and that was when the Raptors then with Kawhi Leonard go ahead and beat the Warriors. Kevin Durant gets it's like that could have been the Bucks championship. That could have been it, right? And while my Milwaukee Brewers, they're one of the best teams in baseball. I've watched Devin Williams blow games. I've watched Josh Hader blow games. This is just what happens in Wisconsin sports. So forgive me if I'm a pessimist, all right? Like I will anger a lot of people who are going to be watching this later on and be like, Joe, how dare you disparage the Packers? And be like, well, prove me wrong, guys. Please, prove me wrong.
Hey, I'm going to speak facts.
Go, Pack, go.
Yeah. Hey, you know what, I want to ask this because I know a bunch of my friends and things like that, or a bunch of our guys, we always talk about it. What's your preferred format? Do you like PPR? Do you like non-PPR? You like auction? You like draft? Are you 2 quarterback guy? Do you like the super flex? Like, what's your go-to type of format?
So I was teasing James about Josh Allen, number 1 overall, not because that was a horrendous pick, but because I really love strategy.
We will see.
I love the strategy conversations about fantasy football. This is the thing that, again, I'm a nerd about many things, but I really like the intricacies of it. So the ways that we can wipe out maybe like luck advantage of things, I think is really important for me because, again, not that I'm just studying it, but like I like to go over this stuff over and over. So full point PPR, like I want more points for receptions, the running backs, receivers, whatever else. Like that is today's NFL, where we're seeing these guys more and more involved. I want my fantasy football to represent what we're seeing in real life. I think that makes super flex leagues or 2 quarterback leagues also matter because the quarterback does become the number 1 overall selection. It is reflective of how important the football game is when you have 2 quarterbacks that go off the board because now it's not just 12 starting, but 24, 32 will get rostered. So a super flex full point PPR league. And then I am the sicko that loves the auction formats because I hate somebody that always has bad luck. I have to pick 9 or 10 every single year because I never get number 1 or 2, even in 17 different redraft leagues. I hate not being able to get Jamar Chase or Jahmyr Gibbs or Bijan Robinson. So in an auction format, you have the opportunity to get whoever you want to. Now you have to budget accordingly, and there is strategy involved with that. But the idea that I can build the roster exactly how I want to, that I'm not reliant on my bad luck or having the AC, the alcohol consumed factor, go on with your leagues, that is something that I really like. So I will go full sicko and say 2 quarterbacks, full point PPR, and I'll do an auction draft. Like that would be my preferred way.
Ooh, all right. Might have to try that.
I never knew there was that much variety when it comes to it. But
hey, can you believe some people do half point PPR?
Standard would be 0 points even per reception. Yeah, that stuff. That's the age of the dinosaur. That's happening right now.
0 points per what?
Yeah, it would just be touchdowns and rushing yards or receiving yards and touchdowns.
Yeah, non-PPR.
No.
That
is called standard, even though it is not standard anymore in fantasy football.
No,
thankfully, I don't see that very much at all.
No, that's great, man. We appreciate you taking the time out. I know it's late. My guys, appreciate you staying up and joining us, Joe. For everybody listening, make sure you guys get a subscription to Rotowire if you want to be best prepared for your fantasy football league. Maybe I should have did some more mock drafts, and maybe I'd went with a different strategy. But
mine's coming up, so let me go ahead and get my.
Hey, Joe, shout outs to you, bro. When Cedric Tillman win me the championship, I'm gonna send you the cheese, dog.
Here, how about this? You guys have my email. I only want Warren to be texting me or emailing me, and I will tell him the pickups, and we'll go ahead and dominate that way. None of the other guys get the benefit. Like if you're trusting me, we're gonna go all the way on this.
Oh, let's get it. I got you. Say less.
We appreciate you, Joe. Appreciate you taking the time out your night, man.
Yeah, sounds good, guys. Thanks for having me on. This was a blast, and I love talking fantasy football with everyone.
Appreciate you, big dog.